Fighting hard, family torn apart. Whispers tearing lives, hearts raw scarred. Judges grinning, deals in shadows locked. Case workers speaking truth they've mocked. Gunning on for justice, rage intense. Bringing kids home from this broken fence. Corruption weighs heavy, laws collapse. Kids go missing behind their maps. CPS stealing kids, no trace. Lies build walls, the truth they erase. Gunners howl, cuts through the air. He won't stop midnight, he'll get there. Dark hallways where the guilty play. Secrets hiding, hope fades away. A man with fire, voice like a storm. Breaking chains, reform, transform. Gunning on for justice, rage intense. Bringing kids home from this broken fence. Corruption weighs heavy, laws collapse. Kids go missing behind their maps. Family shattered, cries dulled by fights. CPS takes them in the dead of night. But Gunner speaks of brighter days, cut through the lies, light ablaze. Family shattered, cries dulled by fights. CPS takes them in the dead of night. But Gunner speaks of brighter days, cut through the lies, light ablaze. Behind their maps.
Hey look, this for every mama got her baby snatched on some bogus shit. For every pops they locked out the crib like he ain't blood. CPS, y'all been eating on pain for too long. We know what you on, but now it's war, this gunning foe. CPS. Kick doors, no warrants, they taking our seeds. Say it's neglect, but they planting they greed. Feds in they pocket, judge got a fee. Run it like a business, adoption spree. Contracts overseas, got partners in France. But shorty from Shy, he ain't get a chance. Mama work 2 jobs, daddy do right, but they still snatch his baby in the middle of the night. Fuck CPS, they ain't saving shit. Just a system full of snakes getting rich off kids. We see through the cap, we done taken the hit. Now it's Suffer Davis popping and we loaded the clip. Gunna got the case, now we in that fight. Taking this to SCOTUS, shining that light. They ruined good homes, now we flipping that script. Time to bring them back, time to empty the clip. They labeled us monsters, called us unfit, but it's they paperwork dirty, all of it forged and flipped. How the fuck they selling babies to a bidder overseas? Then tell the fam you unworthy. Man, please, we got mamas in pain, daddies in tears. They breaking our hearts, been doing it for years. Now we riding with Gunner, and we got the proof. Sworn under oath, now it's time for truth. Trump got the team and the pen in his hand. He said bring them home, now that's the plan. You feds been hiding, but it's over now. We moving like an army, and we ain't bowing down. Fuck CPS, they ain't saving shit. Just a system full of snakes getting rich off kids. We see through the cap, we done taken the hit. Now it's off of Davis popping and we loaded the clip. Gunna got the case, now we in that fight. Taking this to SCOTUS, shining that light. They ruined good homes, now we flipping that script. Time to bring them back, time to empty the clip. They ain't gods, they ain't law, they just people, corrupt people. And when the people rise, ain't no system safe. The Chi-Town, it's the movement. We gunning for CPS, and we coming heavy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wait.
I'm gonna pull the whole thing down. I'm gonna bring the whole fucking diseased, corrupt temple down on your head. It's gotta be biblical.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Gunning for CPS. I'm your host, Gunner. Welcome to a new year after we've taken a short break due to the holidays and due to some illness that's been going on, obviously around the country, and has kind of hit our house just a little bit as well. So we've just been trying to do our best to get through the holidays through here, as most of you probably have as well as fighting sickness. But welcome to a new year, to a new fight, a a chance to gain part of our platform here is education, giving you knowledge and information that will help you either fighting your case in CPS through the state and or federal, focusing in on constitutional rights, and basically just exposure of mass corruption as we go through. As you know, that some of you may know that um, yeah, we've had a lot going on in our case, major developments. There's actually an appeal and everything else into our state to overturn the ruling due to the fact that both the judge and magistrate, well, magistrate first, then the judge, violated procedure and violated the state codes that also dealt specifically with uh, violation of due process. That's just clear as day. But at the same time, these particular codes were mandatory. In other words, the courts, that the judge, the magistrate, CPS, all the others should have known these are the things that should have been done, but those things were not done. And then the state had actually updated the law to make it more specific, which then was able to file under new evidence, which also will be going into our federal case of here's some more new evidence, so on and so forth, to move forward with what we have. But let's dig into a few things here tonight. As far as education and a lot of other things that we have here. And listen, guys, we've been getting tons of exposure. We've been doing this for well over a year now, educating you guys, giving you information, shining the light on the corruption of CPS, the family court system, the states, and the way that they're getting their monies, sharing information as far as, how they've been profiting through it, how they've not been following constitutional rights, even in their policies and procedures, that the states, basically all 50 states, are not following the Constitution when it comes to CPS, DCF, whatever it may be called in your particular part or state, and or a subcontractor, whatever it may be. But these policies and procedures is they're training people to commit constitutional crimes to obtain these children. And if the law was truly followed as well as the Constitution, Every single one of these cases, and we have the documentation and the proof, which is what we're putting on the federal record too, is that for over a decade, the state of Tennessee has been breaking the constitutional rights, um, the violating constitutional rights. Yeah, actually reporting it to the court that they've done these things, and the judges and magistrates play ignorant, which then the doctrine, whether it's criminal or it's civil, it does not matter, that the doctrine of fruit from a poisonous tree should take and apply to every single case, especially as well as a state entity or organization cannot take and um, operate by violating constitutional rights. And now, with the evidence of over a decade that the state of Tennessee, let alone more evidence of all 50 states going into this, of saying you have been illegally obtaining funds, because if they're doing this and they're doing this as a state, they're not entitled to receive any federal funding if they're operating the state or any state agency within there unconstitutionally. It disqualifies them from the funds. So now Tennessee is looking at, especially of over a decade of what we have so far now, a criminal investigation will be moving forward with this as well. But if they find it goes back even further, then the state's going to have to continue to pay those monies back, as well as, once again, Tennessee has crossed the state line in our case into Kentucky, to where now Kentucky's going to have the same exposure and the same things brought to light, and on them, the light shined on them. And a lot of people say, well, what does that matter to me? What does that matter for my case? So on and so forth. Well, you have to understand that once a case is won in a federal court, it becomes automatically what's considered case law in the district or division. So in other words, if a case was won and this is by federal districts, so if something's done in Tennessee, it also affects the state of Kentucky. It also affects the state of Ohio and the state of Michigan immediately. Now, when they go to appeal for it and then they lose, that's when you get established what's called national case law. Okay, guys, that means it applies to all 50 states because it's gone through the appellate process. Now, a lot of people say, well, I'm going to take it to SCOTUS, I'm going to this, I'm going to that. That's when you do the only way you get to SCOTUS is under the appellate process. And then you're saying, I don't want to do this on paper. When a lot of you guys, if you've gotten to the appeals, you have two different methods. One, you can have it like a hearing. Some of it's done on paper, some of it's done on a hearing, or it can all be on paper. In other words, we're not going to debate this. This is so clear and cut dry. We're just going to put it on paper and we're going to go from there. And there's not going to be any arguments. Now, ones where you've seen SCOTUS where they've taken the open option to where they've actually had that's very well known on YouTube, is the actual district. I want to say District 9, which is out of California, which you'll see the video several times about CPS people being able to lie to steal children, even in court. In that particular case, matter of fact, is Hope versus Pelner, Pelnor. And you can look that up on there. And yes, that is Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that went through there. And you guys, if you guys have not seen this particular thing on YouTube, you need to go watch this, because this is actually federal case law. This is national case law that can be cited, and you can use these things. And a lot of those things they talk about, those cases and case laws, and even some of the judges say, hey, this is so well established, especially Fourth Amendment, you can't get past it. I mean, it's so well documented. Now, I've also talked to a lot of people, like I said, on Facebook, so on and so forth, that have gone through and say, well, they had a court order to remove my kids. Okay, but they didn't have a court order or a warrant to come into the home. And that's where a lot of people say, well, how do I know if I've had a federal case? When they removed the kids from the home, did they have a warrant to enter the home, or did they shove a court order in your face and say, hey, we have a court order to do this? And here's why. Because a warrant can only be signed by an Article 3 judge, not a family court judge, okay, to enter the home. And it has to have probable cause with it. A court order, it doesn't have the power. In other words, that judge doesn't have the authority or the ability to say, break into the home and take. If it's in the home, it's Fourth Amendment protected. Once you go outside the home, then they're vulnerable to people coming in, and that's a whole different story. But if you never leave your home, and you know, well, we have an order to do this. Well, guess what? My kids ain't coming out of the damn house, and there ain't a damn thing they can do it. And if they come in, and once that, like I said, and once again, it depends on how you're going to challenge it or what you would challenge it. But it's very, very, very clear. You have to have an Article 3 judge sign it, a warrant to enter the home, even if the kids are in there, if papers. Why? Because the Fourth Amendment, and we've covered this on past shows, covers papers, your documents, everything else like that, and persons. So if you want somebody secured up in your house, well, we've got a court order to do this, but not to come into the home, because as soon as you come into the home, it's an automatic Fourth Amendment issue, and only an Article 3 judge, it says, can issue those warrants, or an Article 1 judge that Congress has given special powers to, which is a lot rarer, and it's not that common. But an Article 3 judge must be addressing that. So if you've had somebody come in and snatch your kids out of your home and they didn't have a warrant, say, well, we have a court order, it's not the same thing. And they want to confuse people, saying these are the same two documents, and they're not. And when that goes to the higher court of saying they broke into my house and kidnapped my kids and they didn't have a warrant, as soon as you pop up, you know, well, we had a court order. That judge doesn't have the authority. And that's what you put in on your paperwork of saying, when you write some of these things, or you file for like a 1983 or something like that, you turn around and say, this is my challenge. You know, this is my question. This judge didn't have the authority to issue anybody to come into my home. Matter of fact, the judge doesn't have the power to do that. But there's so many judges and magistrates so drunk on power, and the police and law enforcement are so damn ignorant because they've not been taught. And I use that word ignorance because it's a lack of knowledge, which they should have this knowledge of saying, wait a minute, I can't go in this home. We can't do this. I can't even assist you in removing the kids via CPS because they're in the house, and they'll have a damn fit. This is where they're bought and paid for. The state has taken over and bullied these law enforcement agencies, like your locally elected constitutional sheriff, of saying, well, the judge did this and that. Well, the judge didn't have the power. But law enforcement is not given that form of education to say and question. It's just follow orders. They don't know what they're getting ready to do is to actually commit a crime. Actually, that is huge. You know, like I said, when it comes to that, and a lot of people don't understand that. Now, with it, like I said, we've been getting all this exposure. And everybody's like, well, what do you mean we're getting exposure? Listen, we've been doing this for well over a year with this show. And I can tell you that the exposure that we've been getting, and the things that have been called out, and the corruption that's been called out, is so mainstream now that and this is what they hate. They don't want the light shined upon them. But let's go to, let's see, a couple of different things I took and found. And these are some of the things I found, but these are a little bit more well-known people, like I said, that you'll notice in some of these clips that are exposing CPS. So let's watch a couple of these videos and see what they're actually saying and what's getting out there.
Child Protective Services, the largest human trafficking organization in the world. There have now been so many cases of this government agency arbitrarily coming into a family's world and taking one of their kids and making them just disappear. 2025 saw a number of government whistleblowers come forward and establish that Child Protective Services could probably be more accurately renamed Child Profiting Systems. Some of you may have heard about the Baby Cyrus case. Levi and Marissa Anderson were living peacefully, just raising their young child in Idaho. And then after seeking medical help for some issues with this child, mysteriously they were surrounded at a gas station and their precious son was forcibly taken from them at gunpoint by the police. Now, fortunately, this case caught national media attention and there was a massive outcry on behalf of this good family. But oh no, they didn't just get their son back. It wasn't until the Heritage Foundation stepped in and financed legal representation for this family to actually win custody of their son back in the courts. Now, there's a documentary that has just been released called Never in America, unmasking the CPS kidnapping empire. This movie surrounds that baby Cyrus case. However, it's got a lot more information in it. Here's a little taste.
It's the greatest fear of parents to have their child taken from them. How in the world does it happen by force at the point of a gun?
This one really made my stomach sink.
I can't even believe this story.
Cyrus, a 10-month-old baby who's been kidnapped, stripped from his loving parents by CPS.
No, go in the car. In the car. It's all right. It's okay.
I don't want anybody to have to endure this.
Nothing but respect for Ryan Mata for making this film. It's available free on YouTube and a number of other platforms. Once again, CPS, the largest human organization in the world. Child Protective Services.
It's 90% of sex trafficking victims come from foster care.
It's probably in your state right now going on under your nose. If you might even know somebody that is a foster parent. And this is nothing against foster parents. There are great foster parents that are doing it for the right reasons. But the problem is the system is, it's abhorrent, honestly. It's like, if you knew what was going on. Sylvia, what's the statistic for sexually abused children in foster care?
It's 90% of sex trafficking victims come from foster care.
I mean, think
90%.
about that. You end foster care, you essentially end sexual abuse.
That's trafficking. Yep.
Like, it's insanity.
Wow, guys. 90%. It's the root of the evil. It's the root of the problem. But still, it's finance is a failed system. Something that's supposed to be put in place to protect children is actually causing more damage. And this is why we've said this is part of a greater evil. As we get into this, that I don't, they give the concept to many of the caseworkers or some of the other people that were defending people, were doing this or doing that. But yet 90% of the time, they're just covering up, especially in the court systems, the crimes of CPS that have been done to even get them into a courtroom, or, even further, not even having jurisdiction on things, and just continuing and continuing and continuing. And it's not up until recently, especially within the past year, that people have been speaking up, finally telling their stories and not being embarrassed of what has happened to them, and coming forward and saying, no, I was abused by the system. I was not taken seriously. This was not handled, especially when it comes to things. And a lot of people that don't understand. And they say, well, what do you mean there's being abused by a system? Well, let me show you something here. And this is going to blow your mind. And this is what's happening, that we're seeing, especially here in Blount County, Tennessee, with, teachers and other people in the school systems, or public officials, or people in churches that are convicted and caught offenders. And matter of fact, we just had Diane Lashmere, I believe it's the way you say her name, used to be a Blount County magistrate here in Tennessee, that she was caught aiding and abetting her son that had child pornography and destroying evidence. It has a federal ongoing case and everything else, and then was remanded back to Blount County to face for the crimes that she did in Blount County. And they gave her like a year's probation or something like that. I mean, it was crazy. And then it can be expunged off the record. The same thing with Mr. Dalton. If you know anything about Dalton in Blount County, it's all over the news. You can Google all of this. Did they give him a slap on the wrist? And they let them back in. Matter of fact, the CPS is actually hiring child predators. This is, well, Gunner, you can't take and prove that. Yes, I can. Look at this. What's this say? Child welfare agency hires ex-teacher accused of creating AI child porn on the job while he was getting paid as a teacher, according to the court documents. That now this person has applied for a position at the Mississippi Department of Children's CPS to go after, supposedly his own. Now, when are predators going to want to catch predators instead of enabling them or allowing them to get away with it? But once again, this was somebody serving in public education under state government that was caught, that then puts in, hey, I'm going to go work for, this particular thing. Well, I've got great experience. I mean, guys that's sick. And they're letting the predators loose, and everybody says, well, we're so against it. And you got things, especially like, I believe her name's Walden or Dalton or something, that's up out of in Kentucky, just south of Lexington, Tennessee, that's in around the Richmond area, and is actually adjudicates in 2 different counties, that basically says she hates homeschooling. And this is a big issue in Kentucky now. To what? Why? Because everybody's pulling their kids out. So now to force you into public schools, they're going to steal your children and then put them in public schools, because the public schools are losing too much money and they're not funding their system or their programming. Now, I'm going to reach a little bit here, because a lot of you guys, like I said, everybody says, oh, well, conspiracy theories. No, now listen, there was a lot of things that were conspiracy theories for decades, that we come to find out once items were declassified under the Trump or under the Trump and or current administration, such as JFK was a big one. But the other one you guys may have missed and not followed up on was something called MK Ultra. And the MK Ultra was a PSYOP program of how to control people or masses, either through manipulation or drugs or conditioning, or all these different things that the government actually paid for. And a lot of people don't, and we go through the things with Diddy's and the tunnels and this. Everybody goes, well, what are they talking about, the tunnels? He lives in Hollywood Hills. Well, that area used to be, if you go back through the history of it, actually used to be an old Air Force base, which those tunnels are the maintenance service runway tunnels. So yes, they collapsed some of them, they exploded some of them, but yet there was some that were still left in place, because they didn't backfill everything in. They just built over the top of it. It was structurally sound, is what they called it. But those things were still there, and some people knew it, and it was done for a reason. There was a person that developed that and bought that for a particular reason. But going back into this thing, that same Air Force base that's in Hollywood Hills, what's known today as Hollywood Hills, the old Air Force base, they did an experimentation called MK Ultra. And MK Ultra was using stuff like LSD, marijuana, all these other things, are conditioning people on how to control them. Now, CPS does this same methodology, and they've adapted this technology or this information that has gone through this to turn kids, because we hear this all the time, that when these kids age out, they've supposedly been abused, of saying, I was coerced, I was beaten, I was drugged, I was intimidated. None of that stuff ever happened, and it has destroyed their lives. And it's all with this conditioning, and this is why forensic interviews are garbage. And everybody says, well, why do you say forensic? Why? Because there's 2 types of interviews. If you go down those particular things, there's a forensic interview that is under suggestive things of shoulda, coulda, woulda happened, versus a factoidal interview that is based off of nothing but cold, hard facts. In other words, this person says this, the evidence matches up with it. That is considered a factoidal interview. In other words, we're searching for the facts. When they go through these forensic interviews, especially with children, and here's the other problem, these children are not being read their rights. And yes, even children have rights, which is also a constitutional rights violation for your children. Excuse me. That they're actually questioning children without reading them Miranda, without taking and questioning them and letting them know, giving them informed consent of what is getting ready to happen. They don't do that, but it's supposed to have been just used for furthering investigation for anything else. But CPS has found a way to convince the states to use these as part of evidence. But once again, that was one of the other things too, and which raises a huge red flag, which says, well, wait a minute, if you're going to enter those under the rules of evidence, then you can't have a one-sided conversation in a courtroom, which is what Tennessee took and did and revamped 24-7-123 under forensic interviews. The cross-examination is this is also a Sixth Amendment violation, because you have a right to face your accuser or what's going on, or even your attorney is supposed to take a turn around and be able to cross-examine them. When they don't do that, that's because of mass corruption, because they know if something else gets out, it weakens their case, and that's all they've got. Once again, there's no facts. This is all on theory. Now, we're going to show you something here that's going to blow your mind, because there was actually another experiment done in our country that was well documented of sane people going into psychological facilities as completely sane people, okay, and how they come out afterwards after going in and just being normal, this and that, and they're looking for problems where there are no problems because they made money off of it. Well, here, don't believe me? Well, this is where, like I said, we do our research, we come out, we show these things, so we've double checked this stuff, fact checked it, and yes, this actually did happen too. So watch this next clip here, and this will blow your mind, because this is what CPS is using against families and children when it comes to what they're doing to the mothers, the families, and everything else. It's all part of this psychological conditioning. See, we didn't have this issue so many years ago because it wasn't about the human psyche. Now they're trying to learn about the human psyche to turn around, not to better you as humans or better us as a country. They're using it as a manipulation tool to turn around and convince people of something that is based on theory. Well, let's watch.
What happened when 8 totally sane people were sent into an insane asylum? In the 1970s, Stanford researchers sent 8 perfectly healthy people to psychiatric hospitals to see if doctors could spot they were faking. Each volunteer claimed to hear a single voice saying thud, empty, or hollow. This was enough to get them admitted into the hospital. Then, the experiment really began. Once inside, the volunteers acted completely normal. No hallucinations, no voices, nothing. But the doctors never changed their minds. Every single volunteer was diagnosed with schizophrenia or manic depressive psychosis. Some were locked inside for weeks. One stayed trapped for over 50 days. Across 12 hospitals, not one staff member realized they were fake. When Stanford published the results, psychiatry was shaken. One hospital fought back and said, "Send us your fake patients, we'll catch them all." Over the next 3 months, they flagged 41 patients as imposters and suspected 42 more. But then Stanford revealed the twist. They hadn't sent a single fake patient at all. What happened when 8 totally sane people...
Wow. Completely sane people, nothing wrong with them, turn around and they couldn't tell the difference till they were caught. And then when they turn around and were caught, then they didn't send anybody. And then all of a sudden, now we've caught all these people faking. All of a sudden, we didn't send nobody. Shows the corruption in the system when an audit is done. And we've seen a lot of audits going on lately. NGOs have been, really, really cut. They've caught a bunch of corruption. Voting, we're still going through the stuff with the corruption in the voting. Then you've got the daycare thing, and it's not just, listen, guys, it's not just Minnesota. Okay, even in Tennessee, there's been other daycares that have been caught. Here in Tennessee, here in just about every state. What they're trying to do, and then President Trump comes up and says, well, I'm going to cut all your daycare bonuses and all that other stuff till we recertify everything and make sure those numbers are lining up, because the amount of money that the Somalians were stealing from Minnesota, that they added this up with it, is actually equal to Somalia's gross national product number. In other words, their money that they were making off their country was off of theft, 100% of it. And we have been supplying this not just in other, not just in Somalia, but several other countries and this and that, to where they have been funneling these monies under grants, under some of these other programs and stuff that are out there that are under that same thing that these people apply for. They're giving false information, and there's no checks and balances with this stuff, and they've just been draining this country. Can you imagine the monies that the NGOs, the stuff with the other things that Doge has found, the wasteful spending, and then all of a sudden you come in with the stuff with the daycares and some of the other corruption and this and that. That means our taxes shouldn't be that high. Our cost of living shouldn't be that high. We shouldn't have all these other things. Why? Because that's wealth we should have never given away, and it should have stayed right here at home. But our vets suffer. And then you've got mentally ill people loose on the streets in places like Seattle and in California, all over the place, that they're let loose because, the idea is, let's shut down the asylums and then integrate them. But there are certain people that are so far gone mentally that they do need to be institutionalized. But once again, that was abused. And then you're creating stuff with CPS, with PTSD, conditioning, messing with kids' mind, making them think that events happened that never happened because of psychological manipulation, especially with children, especially when they're impressionable. Or if you've got children that have never been properly diagnosed or were actively in trying to get diagnosed with a mental health defect or a processing disorder, excuse me, that may have caused the initial thing. But CPS doesn't want to look for that, of saying, and give you an example. I know there's something wrong with my kid. To give you, just a off the wall example, I take them to treatment, to psychological treatment. They deal with a full spectrum of everything. Okay. And that's where you go to, but they're also mandated reporters. So they have trigger things that they have to report. So then CPS comes in and says, oh, wait, well, maybe we have an issue of this and that. They stop treatment for all mental health and this, that, and then shove these kids into CAC centers or places like NECO, NECCO, and other organizations that deal with mental health. And they focus specifically on being abused or sexually abused, not saying that there may be another underlying condition of a mental health issue. Because once again, children, if you do your research into the mental health facility, the mental health area, children cannot be diagnosed unless there's a physical thing. In other words, I can see on a machine brain matter's messed up, or there's a condition, or this is going on. In other words, it's an unseen thing or undiagnosed thing. Children can't even begin to be diagnosed for certain conditions until they're of the age of 7, or sometimes all the way up to the age of 13, depending on what there is. But once again, the child is under development, and CPS does not take any of this into consideration because it does not fill. And this is where they're abusing the system, because they know this. They know children are developmentally to that thing, and they know it could be something else, or a wild imagination, or something they've seen on TV, or something that they've reheard, and their imagination gets a hold of it, or they see something to where that's the attention they want to get from somebody, and they'll take and do this or that. Or you've even had kids manipulate the system, say, well, if my dad won't buy me the prom dress I want, I'm going to call in on CPS and saying he's abusing me. Excuse me. Because I'm not getting what I want. They're conditioned to do this in there. They go back and they interview these kids and say, where did you learn that? I was conditioned that in public schools. Public schools. I've got teachers and everybody else, and this is where you guys need to watch, and you're moving forward in this stuff. If you've had a teacher influence your child in public school, and they are representing, they once again, they work for the state. They are a state actor. They can be sued in their official and personal capacity under the law for conditioning your child to do something. That's a crime. That's an actual crime, is to manipulate somebody into thinking something that's not really there. But once again, they're not teaching you the law. And then, of course, these joke of a lawyers and this bar association that's garbage, that protects itself 99% of the time, it won't do their job, which is what you're seeing in these corrupt family courts. Nobody's turning around and saying, hey, you got to follow the Constitution regardless. Hey, you've still got to, you're in family court. It's a division of civil. You still have to follow the rules of civil procedure. It's all still got to be there. And once again, they'll confuse it. Well, we don't deal with the Constitution, this, that. And listen, we've told you guys several times, if there's a constitutional issue or a U.S. code, there is a very high percentage, way above 80%, that your state has got its own state code or statute that matches basically the same area that it's trying to cover. And you can cross-reference that. And like I said, a lot with AIs that are out there, you can ask them to do that for you. Hey, I had this particular thing taken happen. I want you to go through and say this was a constitutional rights violation. Can you also go through the state constitution and the state codes and statutes and show me where the errors were to go through this stuff? Or you can do it the old-fashioned way, which we recommend you, like I said, double check for yourself anyway. Just don't take AI's word for it, because it's not always accurate. Do your own research, but sometimes it can point you in the right direction to where you could turn around and go, oh, here's the code, and here's the code they broke. That's what states want to hear, and that's what they don't want to get caught doing, is breaking a state code or statute of saying, you didn't do this, and it doesn't matter if you're a family court or not. Here's the rules. Matter of fact, a lot of the rules for family court of the civil division of which is family court, actually has its own codes and stuff like that. Like one of the ones that we quoted earlier, that we filed on, that was TCA code 24-7-123, that they made it further defined. And this was supposed to benefit, and you got to watch some of these things. It was made to benefit CPS, but it also took and bit them in the ass, because as soon as they took and put that up there, that means you can go back, even if your case is past the appellate date. There's been a new law, there's been a new evidence, there's been this, and you can now file on these of saying, this would have made a huge difference in my case to actually, I wouldn't have gotten the verdict I would have gotten. And when you go to things like cross-examination and you deal with that particular thing and or this or that to go in there, and that wasn't done, well, not only does that expose them for not doing cross-examination and following the code, it also, you can make the quick connection. That's a huge due process violation and a Sixth Amendment violation, which means the judge or magistrate has violated their oath. And here's the proof. When you get that stuff in there and then you hold them to it, and they say, well, what if they don't follow it and they don't do this and they don't do that? If it's a law, especially a new law, look up that law, because there's a House bill, there's a Senate bill, just like there is in the federal government with your state, and they have to vote on it. And this particular change was done, especially this thing, and this is what you have to look for too, it was passed unanimously. In other words, everybody voted for it. So then you can go to the lawmaker and say, hey, lawmaker, you know this law that you took and passed, and it's supposed to be law, and it's effective by this date, blah, 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 to go through this and that. Well, I just went through this, and they kicked it back, and they didn't follow your rules. Well, that's where they get in trouble, even the appellate court or the judicial branch of your state, because then your state lawmakers can pull them in to an oversight committee or something like that, of saying, whoa, a judicial oversight committee, of going, why didn't you rule this way? Why didn't you do these particular things? Because you should have followed this. And this is how we meant it to be done or read. And why didn't you follow what we passed? And then they can drop them on sanctions and remove them and everything else if they feel, well, I just didn't feel like it applied. That's not going to go over so well, especially with lawmakers. Because believe it or not, the judicial branch of government, and the mimic style that it was done even through the states, was designed to actually be the weakest link of the three separate powers. And you go, well, how do you look at the Federalist Papers? Look at some of those founding father documents that we had of why it was like that. That's like everybody's going through all this crap with, with executive orders right now, and the court's trying to stop this and that. It's not going to happen. He can do what he wants under the executive branch. That's just like the reclassification of marijuana from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3. Well, he can't do that. Well, the executive branch of government controls the Food and Drug Administration. It also controls several other things in the Department of Health and Human Services. They must follow what the executive branch or the boss says. You can't this or that. And reclassifications of medications happens all the time throughout history. And we're beginning to wake up. And once again, this country's beginning to wake up, and we've about had enough of this. But people have got to understand they have to learn to understand their rights to even defend their rights. And that's been a big proponent of what we do here at Gunning for CPS, as well as, walking you through some of the different things that we've done in our case to show you, what we're in the access of doing and how to go about the steps when it comes to your own personal case. Because that's one thing a lot of other movements is that, well, your case is this. Yes, it's true. Everybody is different, but there's a lot of similarities. But a lot of stuff that we cover is the rules. In other words, if you're going to file a 1983, okay, and we've told this to people 100 times, and we still have people that don't listen or don't comprehend what we're saying. You can only sue for a constitutional rights. In other words, you can connect on paper, this person did this in their official capacity, not their personal, because that's all you can do is in 1983 is under their official capacity. Their personal capacity goes to the Court of Claims. That's where you do it on their personal bond, their personal insurance, their personal assets, their license getting revoked, the whole 9 yards with that, and putting on a Brady list. Now, a lot of people say, well, what's a Brady list? A Brady list is saying you're a corrupt individual and you cannot be trusted in court. You cannot testify under anything. Your word is garbage. And you're all of a sudden out of it. And basically, they won't touch you for government service, because if you ever called for anything, you can't be trusted to testify and be truthful, because you've had a history of doing corrupt things. That's how those people end up getting on those things, and you have to fight them differently. And you get a lot of people with the 1983s that go way off into everything else, but you have to make the connection within your arguments of your 1983 to turn around and say, hey, this is where this person did this, and by this action, they broke this constitutional right. And here's a case law or a case that is very similar, that has very certain aspects that's similar to my case, and they ruled this way already, and this is kind of like where we're pushing for. So you're getting them to think about how the other judge, when they do their deposition, or their definition of the whole case and summarize everything and why they ruled the way they did, that it has that same frame of mind. In other words, you want the judge you have now to consider what the previous judge was thinking, or their way of thought of why they come to that solution. But understanding case law don't mean jack when it comes to the Constitution, because the Constitution's absolute. Everybody, and a lot of people will argue, well, case law. No, Constitution's not up for debate or interpretation. It's done. It's just an absolute, and it should be treated as such, but it's not. And the states have not been doing anything. But once again, they're operating within the form or the aspect that they can technically legally operate, which is supposed to be under contract law. And there's a case on that too that says state can't deal with you anymore except through contract. So if I disagree and I refuse to contract, and you're going through that, but you got to quote the case, hey, Your Honor, You can't, and I'm not consenting, or I don't understand because why? I'm not signing a contract with you. This is why CPS services and everything else, and it says in every state, is voluntary. And is it truly voluntary? No, because they're forcing. When do they offer any of the other services that are supposed to provide? If I need food, if I need shelter, if I need this and that, they're supposed to aid in that, not steal your damn kids and say, well, you can't, you don't have a place to live, you don't have this and this and that. That's misappropriation of funds and services because they're selecting which services to give you, and they're required to give you all services that are needed. If you need help with a doctor, if you need a ride somewhere to get somewhere, they're supposed to set all that stuff up, even back and forth. It's just the way it is. Those are the rules. But until you guys know how to articulate that and put that in your filings and put those things on, and we tell and I tell everybody, listen, there's a lot of times you'll go through your family court case. The issue is don't go just what's said in court or this or that. And even if your attorney won't file it your damn self. Get evidence on the record and make it clear with everything that you're filing, whether it's evidence, motions, or anything else. You're pointing this stuff out. Here's why. Because if it's on the record, it doesn't go under hearsay or magically, your hearing notes or anything else magically disappear. And oh well, Your Honor, we don't know what happened to it. Well, Your Honor, that should be not so much a dismissal, Your Honor. We could go back through it again, and then that's why you put it on the court record, and you get those documents when you turn them in, they're stamped. Okay. Or if you do it digitally, they send you back a stamped copy. Hey, this has been filed. You can't argue with what is hard physical documentation and evidence. Now, you will run into judges and magistrates that will ignore every single one of your filings. This strengthens your appellate process when you go through, and sometimes you do not have to wait to file in the appellate court. There are certain writs or habeases, this and that, in between during the course of your family court case of saying the judge is not complying with this, and that, as those particular writs and or habeas that is done, that you're telling the higher courts, take control of this because your judge is out of control. And you can call them out on that. And like I said, it depends on how you file those. Now, I've heard a lot of people will do research on certain judges or magistrates and say, hey, well, even when you've gone to the appellate court, how successful are they? Well, it's constantly kicked back. And there's a reason why, because I've seen some of the filings and go, oh my God, that is crap. Even for somebody that's a bar card and an attorney, it's sloppy. It's bare minimum. It's not using everything they could possibly use. Because why? Their first thing is to the bar. It's not to their client. Because if it was happening in their situation, I guarantee you, if it was happening to them personally, and you can go through and they've done that where they've attacked lawyers for going after them and taken their kids. And they've slammed all these judges, everything else, and held it in the same kind of, wait a minute, this is a huge conflict of interest. Why? This attorney has seen all these judges. They can adjudicate on this stuff, but they're still doing it. Corruption. And that's what it comes down to, is mass corruption. One other things I wanted to share with you was another article that I took and found. And this comes out of Harvard Law. And you guys can look this up. And this deals with the increase of civil suits. This is Civil Suits by Parents Against Family Life. If you follow me on Facebook, there's a copy of this link that's on there. If you scroll through some of the history on my profile, you'll see the same thing. And what this goes over, let's see if we can get this a little bigger, is that, their policies and procedures is what this is talking about. Is how they even talk about how they take and target poor communities and surveillancing people. And people say, well, once you're in the system, you're in the system. It's absolutely true. Hey, if you have to deal with CPS and your name's in there, and then you have kids and their name's on there, and when they get older, I guarantee, CPS is going after your kids and your grandchildren. And it talks about unlawful removals, warrantless searches, discriminating practices. Why? And here's something else that I found out. And I was talking to a good friend of mine, and I did some research on this. And I'm going to blow your mind because check this out. Did you know that the state of Arizona actually shut down their CPS system in the entire state? Shut it down. They did reform, okay? Restructured it, cleaned it up, this and this and that. And slowly over time, the same people that used to work for them got hired back. And the same thing is now happening again to where Arizona is looking at CPS again that has been reformed, that all these people pushing for reform, it does not work because it goes back and it's like a disease or a cancer, and it just goes back to the same way it was before. Arizona has pointed this out severely, and they're looking at it again after the reforming part has done. Arizona has led the way as far as a case study of saying reform does not work. Abolishment is the only solution. Why? Because if it's truly child abuse, guys, and listeners say, well, they're going to take and leave our children, defenseless and this and that and all these other things. This and no, CPS should be abolished 100%. That whole division of family court abolished and everybody held accountable 100% because it's unconstitutional. One. Two, it interferes with the duties of a duly elected sheriff. These are criminal codes of child abuse, neglect, all these other things, but they're trying to adjudicate them in a civil court, and they're giving you, all these things that they could go through here, that it's a criminal action. Otherwise, piss off. Other than that, you're supposed to be able, and you could do that without knocking on my door, is go to a website and advertise, here are some services, and if you need these services like food banks or this or this or that, and do it off a website. We don't need thousands of caseworkers to do what they're not already doing. But they are incentivized through the foster care program and everything else to what? Steal children. Rachel Keefe, what if I disagree on what all happened due to me not understanding under the ADA? Yes, that is a position you can take with your filing. Matter of fact, we have Equal and the Same that on the CPS Breaking News Network, which we're part of, that does a show, Henry, excuse me, every Saturday night, that he does a show. I believe he starts at 7:30 on YouTube channel CPS Breaking News. And we do show his show here through Facebook and so on and so forth through our lives. That we do have our lives back now, that we're able to do lives on Facebook. Thankfully, for no reason we were banned. Didn't even give us one. Just said, you're cut out. But yes, under the ADA, if you say I didn't understand, because then once again, you can't contract with somebody that doesn't understand, and that would be one of the theories or positions you would take is, how could I contract with the state if I don't comprehend? And then you would end up attacking it not from family case law aspect, but under contract law, both state and federal, of saying, I didn't contract with them, I didn't this, I didn't that. And like I said, there's other case law and stuff like that out there that says, hey, they have to contract with us. Now what do you do? Because if they don't have a contract, or they forced you into something with this and that, and it's not a criminal aspect, it's a huge no-go. And that's what they're getting ready to get exposed on, stuff of saying, and you got to look at your state's constitution too, because like Tennessee, especially if you look at that, says specifically, matter of fact, we can bring this up, and we'll show you guys. Let's see. This will pull up here. Okay, and this is for all you guys in Tennessee, and you can look for this. This is and I'm going to show it to you in here in just a second. And it's under Declaration of Rights, Article 1, Section 14, and I'm going to share the screen with you guys in here in just a minute. And this is what you look for where they violate their own state's constitution. Okay. Let me show it to you. Boom. Let me make this larger so you can read it. Number 14, that no person shall be made to answer for any criminal charge. Wait a minute. Did they put a criminal charge on a civil case? Did they codify it as a criminal charge, even though it's in civil court? Yes. Yes, they did. And they do this all the time in Tennessee and several other states. But wait, their own constitution says no person shall be put to answer for any criminal charge or code, but by presentment of an indictment or an impeachment. So if you were never indicted or impeached in the state of Tennessee and you got a criminal code, okay, in your civil case or in family court, and they do this all the time. It's sneaky as hell because they don't think you're going to know the Constitution. Now, wait a minute. The Constitution says I can't, and it says for any crime or criminal action. And if it has a criminal code, that's an automatic violation of the Constitution of your own state. Now you've got them because not only have they violated their state's codes, you violated the state constitution. That's an act of treason on a state level. And you can prove that. But you got to go through and understand where your rights are. Where do you find your rights? How do they work even within your own state? This is where you dig into those things that when we tell you, do your research, get your understanding. One, understand your constitutional rights. The law of the land. Two, go through your state's constitution, because there's a lot of stuff in there saying, wait a minute, this happened to me, but my state constitution said that's rooms and grounds for an appeal, guys. And you do it under new evidence. Hey, I just recently discovered this. And that's what you have to put on paper, because they'll end up hitting you with probably a motion to show cause. And what you're going to say is, hey, a law has changed, or hey, this is new evidence, and this new evidence would make a difference to overturn it. Or procedurally, once again, there's many different rules of civil procedure. You'll have to find the one that matches, of saying they didn't follow the state's constitution or the constitution or this and that. Why? Because this is completely missing, or this is on the record showing they did, and they now stumble upon themselves. Now what are you going to do? Because they're caught. And then that gets exposure. And then all of a sudden there's a huge damn problem for everybody across the way. Oh, now you've got a corrupt judge and you can call them out for it. Why? You didn't do this, or you did this, or you filed it this particular way because you did this and that, and you thought it was cute, which CPS tries to do, is jack people up. You accused me of a crime and convict me of a crime, but I've never been indicted or impeached. You violated the state's constitution because it says all. There's no room for interpretation. Well, we could do it. No, it says all. And see, when that's why I tell you guys when to say, well, you got, you're Gunner, you're pretty confident about your appeal and everything else. This is why. You violated not only this code and this law change that they took and did, you violated your own state's constitution by doing what you were trying to do. And then you wouldn't allow crossing. I mean, it was a cover up. Why? Because I was calling out CPS for the illegal shit they were doing in the courtroom and outside of the courtroom, and the judge and everybody else ignored it and then went into cover-up mode. Why? Because if we let him go, he's not going to shut up about this, and then he's got a lawsuit. That's how the system protects the system. And a lot of you guys have already gone through this, especially when you point out about your caseworker or this or that, or them doing this, or they're not following this. And even in the courtroom, once again, these people get comfortable, especially in family court. Well, we're not going to, they still have to follow those things. And when you point it out, they get scared. When you get educated, they get scared. Because now you not only understand it, you comprehend it, you're able to apply it. And that scares the hell out of them. Now you're not going in paying just an attorney, because when you pay the attorney, you're saying, I'm not smart enough to represent myself. That's what you say to the court. But you get a lot of other people um, that go through that. Now, once again, Rachel, if you go through that stuff and a judge denies your two appeals, your judge doesn't have the power for you to go to the appellate court and can't deny that power. Matter of fact, that's something you actually report to the attorney general's office of saying, my judge applied my appeals. No, I want to go to the appellate court. All I have to do is in every state is notify the court. The judge doesn't have the power to interfere with it whatsoever, nor does a magistrate at all in all 50 states. They cannot. A matter of fact, if you take and report that to the attorney general's office, that they jacked up and withheld your appeals to even going to the appellate court, that's a criminal act. And yes, that must be reported. And once again, you have to dictate that. Once again, don't just call FBI, don't call just the attorney general. File paperwork, put it into words, list everything out and this and that, and just don't dump on them. Don't emotional upchuck on them. Keep it simple. I was denied appeals by the judge. They interfered with me appealing. The judge didn't want somebody else's opinion on it. That's the point of the appellate court, is to keep the lower courts in check. And that's a huge issue. And yes, wife 2 years, you never signed anything with CPS and they carried on anyway. Exactly. And that's the stuff in your appeals. I did not contract with them. I did not this and that. They are not law enforcement, even though they like to act like it. They have no oath. And you point out, I was questioned and never read my rights. And they say, well, it doesn't. Yes, it does. And then you take it up to even to the higher court. That's where you go into the 1983 under constitutional questions of saying, am I not supposed to do this if I'm being accused of a crime? Yes, child abuse is a criminal code. And if you're having that in there, and you got to watch how they codify this stuff or how they file this paperwork, because you can catch them on trying to slide in something that they can't legally take and put on there, and they're doing it. But you've got to understand how all that stuff works. Well, guys, it's been fun. We're going to take and wrap things up tonight. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to another new year. We'll give you more information as we take and get more updates in the case and more things that we learn and processes. We've increased our team that we're doing this and getting more resources and more people out there. The ADA is absolutely a 100% a thing, but here's the thing. Don't make it your primary focus unless you have a physical disability. And this is why I say, and I hate to say this, I've had this conversation with Henry that does Equal and the Same. They're not going to pay attention to just that being your primary argument. They're going to want something else beyond that. And that's just the bias of the courts and the discrimination. And it's just the way it works. It's not supposed to. Now, if you go to the federal level, it's a little bit different story, but state level, they could care less because they're covering up the fact that 90% of them are using those funds of thinking, hey, I have a ramp out front and a handicap bathroom, and that's all I need to do as far as ADA. There are what is known as visual disabilities and what are called hidden disabilities. And the court is not supposed to discriminate between the two. For example, a visual one is somebody in a wheelchair. Another one for one you don't see is PTSD or severe anxiety order. That the court is supposed to compensate for those things, and they're not. But they're still taking the money, the grants, and everything else that they're applying for, like, well, because they look at it as, ooh, more free money. And when you get them to become compliant and do the things they're supposed to, you find out that we found out upon other investigation, no state's following it. They're just taking the money and they're not providing the services they're supposed to. And that's a huge issue. It's called fraud. And you can call it out on your own case. But guys, it's been great. Catch us again next week. Same time, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, every Sunday. We enjoyed the break. Everybody's trying to get healthy. As you can tell, we've still got the little scratchy cough going. Stay healthy, stay smart, educate yourself, educate one another, and encourage each other. Why? Because this takes a mental toll on everybody, and you guys have got to stay strong, find your resources. But here's the one thing: don't let them take who you are and the things you value most, such as your family, your partner, and some of your other relationships. Don't let them rob you of that, because it's up to you what they can take and what they can't take. And the one thing they can't take is what's in here and what's in here. And that's up to you to give it up or give them access to it. It may hurt, but at the same time, don't let them rob you of that. Don't let them take what they never had a right to take. They've already taken enough. Don't give them any more. Stay strong, stay educated. We'll see you next week. Have a great week, guys.
They said don't fight the system. They said stay quiet.
They were wrong. Lock in. We are exposing what so many have failed to. We are going to show you what bar attorneys have hidden from all of us. Hundreds of thousands of children and twice that of parents have been lied to and walked down the road of termination. It's the death penalty. We're all of the protesters, the ones who fight for the rights of prisoners, dogs, illegal immigrants. Why aren't you coming to the aid of our children and families? Right here in America, every day a child per minute is kidnapped.
And no one cares. We fight alone until today. CPS punishers mount up. Here comes the CPS Punisher.
Anonymous tip, another lie from one of them. No warrant, no proof, just a badge and a grin. Stealing kids like trophies, thinking they'll win. Mama crying on the porch, daddy in the cage. System wrote the script, but the CPS Punisher just flipped the page. The educator they banned, I see every violation, every forged line, every ex-part hearing, every stolen time. One tap of the app and the truth ignites. Welcome to the CPS Punisher, now we can fight.
CPS and the courts have lied to us all.
Shadows, the skull in the night, the binder full of secrets and weapons you all need. Ab initio, watch me void that lie. Fourth Amendment armor, watch the tyrants cry. Falsified drug test, gone in a flash. I see Tebio, warrior, due process king. Every parent's hero when the hotline rings. I call it justice. Download the truth, now the system busts us. From the courtroom to the streets, hear the battle cry. The CPS punishers arrive. Kiss your bar asses goodbye. They tried to silence us. Now we're the loudest voice in the room.
CPS Punisher.
Here to avoid the chains and expose the game.
CPS Punisher.
The educator they never wanted you to find.
Born as her.
The children never leave again. Families rise, we never look back. This ain't revenge, this is reunification. This ain't rage, this is resurrection. Open the app, step into the fight. You ready?
CPS Punisher.
The app you need when they took your kid.
CPS Punisher.
The truth they hid, now the truth gets lit.
Born as her.
Download the power, take back the throne.
Punisher.
You're never alone. CPS Punisher. Family show. cries dulled by fights. CPS takes them in the dead of night. But Gunner speaks of brighter days cut through the lies.